Hi, this is the 8th episode of the Hashbrown Traveler. So I'm live on location to meet the person who has the oldest passport and who has traveled to the United States. So let's go.
Full name happens to be Shampu Ramachandraya. Father was a tradesman and he was brought up in a poor family. But during the World War II, and with the suggestion of Valgar of the Balapur, Kongadiappa, my father and his elder brother went to um, Mumbai, earlier Bombay, Maharashtra, and obtained technical know-how of coloring or dyeing the cloths. So because we are basically belonging to weaver community, that is to weave uh, things like clothing, things like that. So at that time there was no technology to color them. So they went there and with I think Imperial Chemical Limited, Imperial Chemical Color Limited. I don't exactly remember the title. So that is a German technology. So they obtained that technology and they came back and started using them. And it was after World War II, and they made plenty of money. So huge amount of money. And at the same time, my father earlier had married his. I think he married his first wife happened to be a relative also, like sister's daughter or something like that. And he had four sons and two daughters. Uh, round and forget round the world and forget about the bad experience. So he gave away his big property to his brother-in-law, and since he did not have adequate English language, he was a school teacher, but he did not have adequate language proficiency in English. Therefore, he took along with him his local friend Sri T. Sidlingaya, who accompanied him because he was a lawyer, had LLB education, therefore he could help him in English communication. So with this expense, he took him along, and they went to from Doddaballapur to um, Chennai, now earlier Madras, then to Colombo, now Sri Lanka, then to perhaps Philippines, and then they landed in San Francisco, all by ship. Then from San Francisco to New York City, they traveled by uh, road transport, and from again from New York to London, they traveled by ship, and they looked around. He visited well-known places in America, particularly at that time Empire State Building was the tallest building in the world, and he was amazed at the lots of skyscrapers in New York. He would say, tell us that to see the top of any building there in Manhattan, one has to lie down on the footpath, and yet he cannot see the top portion of the building. So such tall buildings he was amazed to see. And then from there they traveled again by ship to London, and again they saw lots of places over there. And his friend T. Sidlingaya, he, because of his law background, he wanted to study further to gain knowledge in his profession. Therefore, he stayed there for some more time while my father left for towards India. So at that time, from London to Karachi flight was there, and so he went to the aerodrome and asked for a ticket from London to Karachi. That person who was booking a ticket was very much surprised, because at that time people who could fly in air were only Maharajas. Maharajas and great people. But he was an ordinary tradesman from Doddaballapur and wearing a turban and asking for air ticket from London to Karachi. He was surprised greatly, but anyhow, he got a ticket from Karachi to Doddaballapur. He traveled by train, and of course, there was a great jubilant occasion for people in Doddaballapur to see their neighbor going round the world and then covering the entire world as if to, which is some kind of a proud moment. And he was welcomed, correlated and all that. At that time, my mother also helped in welcoming him, and he at that time had lost his wife, as I said that before. So he wanted to marry my mother also. They married, and I am the last only son to my mother. And so he left everything in the hands of his brother-in-law at that time. Brother-in-law happens to be his sister's husband, my father's sister's husband. So he asked him to take care of the entire property, made over actually, legally made over the properties to him to take care of that, as if he's going away to forest. But anyhow, went round, came back and took charge, and his brother-in-law was kind enough to return without any grumbling on his part. So returned, and he late acting.
Regular, sir. Here we look at Champur Ramchandraya's passport. So if you see in the opening, you can see the usual the thing as I meant, the usual thing what I had mentioned in the previous episode, the intro and the same thing, the seal and all the other details. So in this page we see Shampur Ramchandraya's photo with his details also, when he was born and the other details. So in the next page you see this part where there is a mentioning in the observations, not available for Japan without visa from a Japanese consular official. This is the first observation. Second observation, not available for the United States of America without a visa from an American consular official. Now third observation is permitted to enter and remain in Egypt. Here is the US visa issued to Mr. Shampur Ramchandraya. So in that was issued in April 18, 1932, and you can see that the revenue stamp is missing, because Mr. Devaprakash said that when he was young he used to collect all the stamps out of the passport without even knowing that it was kind of a valuable and integral part of the visa at that time. He was not aware of that time. So figure out how much it was charged for that visa at that time. So here is the next page where you can see how he landed to San Francisco by port, and it was on June 25th, 1932. So he had embarked his journey from Madras, and from Madras he went to Colombo via Dhanushkodi to Talemanar. You can see the Talemanar stamp here, Talemanar police. And in Colombo he had applied for a Japanese transit visa, you can see here. And then he went on way to Singapore. In Singapore he had applied for a transit visa issued for the Republic of China at that time. And he would have reached China first, and then he would have transited to Japan, and from Japan he would have gone to San Francisco by ship. So from there he went to New York, like as mentioned by Mr. Devaprakash. From New York he went to London, and from London he started his trip to come back to India. So this is where he had started to apply for visas there. So you can see this visa applied in for the Second Republic of Greece, because it's a transit visa also, and he had transited through France, and then he transited through Switzerland. You can see in these stamps, and then he transited through Kingdom of Italy. You can see these stamps here through flight. So it's written Brindisi Aeroscalo. First there's entry stamp Entrata, and then Uchita, and then he had reached Greece by that time, and from Greece he flew to Palestine. According to my friend Mr. Neil from Our Passports, he had mentioned that Samak had a airbase from 1929 to 1935 where he would have taken a flight to Baghdad. So you can see that visa to Baghdad, to Iraq, was issued by the Royal Iraqi Embassy at that time. So you can see the entry stamp to Baghdad on 24th August 1932. And from to Iran, you can see this visa here, which was a transit visa issued in London. And since it was written in the Nastaliq script, it was very difficult to decipher. So I asked my friend Mr. Safari from Iran to translate it for me. He said that it's a visa transit for Mr. Ramchandraya, Imperial Consulate of Iran, London. It's a 5 days permit, entry from south of Iran. Visa fee is 3 kran. It was dated somewhere in August. That's what. Thank you, Mr. Safari, for the info. And he landed in Bushehr with the solar Hijri calendar date 3/6/13/11. So then after that you may know that he might have gone through British India. That's obviously Karachi. He would have gone from there, and then he would have traveled all the way by train back to his hometown.
We are the first Indian couple to travel in all the 7 continents. That includes